Welcome to this explainer. You know, we all love to think of ourselves as these perfectly rational creatures, right? Especially when it comes to money. We build out our spreadsheets, we weigh the pros and cons, and we try our absolute best to make the smartest financial choices possible. But I've been looking into some fascinating new research that asks a pretty wild question. What if our physical state, specifically how much we sleep and our internal biological clocks, is secretly governing our financial logic? Let's dive in and uncover exactly how our biology is pulling the strings on our risk-taking behavior.
So I want you to think back to the last time you had to make a really big decision. Maybe it was a major purchase or a significant investment, and you had to make it while you were just completely exhausted. Did you play it safe, or did you just say whatever and throw caution to the wind? Our intuition might tell us one thing, but the data tells a much more complex story about how sleep deprivation fundamentally alters our relationship with money, and more importantly, with risk.
Take a look at this concept from the SOURCE study because it highlights a massive biological truth. When you lose sleep, you're essentially paying a heavy cognitive tax on your brain's prefrontal regions. And why does that matter? Because those are the exact centers responsible for your rational, calculating, analytical processing. When fatigue literally robs those centers of their power, we are left making choices using entirely different and significantly less reliable neural pathways.
All right, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at sleep, time, and risk. Second, the science of choice. Third, the real-world experiment. Fourth, the surprising results. And finally, takeaways for daily decisions.
Okay, part 1, sleep, time, and risk. Let's talk about the invisible forces of decision-making.
To truly understand the choices we make, we first have to understand the biological baseline that we bring to the table every single morning. We usually just obsess over how many hours of sleep we get, right? But this introduces a concept you might not be thinking about at all: circadian mismatch. It's not just about the quantity of sleep, it's about when your brain is being asked to perform. Whether you are a morning lark or a night owl, that's your chronotype. So if you force a night owl to make a high-stakes financial choice at 7:30 in the morning, that is a circadian mismatch. Your brain is literally fighting its own biological clock just to process information.
Moving into Section 2, the science of choice and how framing shapes your reality.
Before we get back to sleep, we really need to understand prospect theory. Imagine these two scenarios. In a gain frame, you're told you can keep $3 out of a total of $10. In a loss frame, you're told you will lose $7 out of a total of $10. Mathematically, these are identical outcomes. You walk away with $3 either way. But psychologically, they are worlds apart. Prospect theory shows that we humans hate losing so much more than we enjoy winning, that a loss frame will actually push us to take risky gambles just to try and avoid that terrible feeling of a loss.
So why do we fall for that framing trick? Well, it comes down to the dual process model of choice. Basically, our brains run on two systems. System 1 is our rapid, automatic, and highly emotional system. System 2 is our analytical, deliberative, math-crunching system. When a choice is framed as a loss, it triggers that primal System 1 panic. Now, if you are well-rested, you can deploy your rational System 2 to overcome this bias, do the math, and realize it's just an illusion. But remember that heavy cognitive tax we talked about earlier? If you're sleepy, System 2 is completely offline, leaving your emotional System 1 totally in charge.
That brings us to Section 3, the real-world experiment. We are leaving the laboratory.
To test exactly how this works, the researchers didn't just lock people in a sterile lab. They designed a rigorous 3-week crossover study with 149 participants living their actual everyday lives. In week 1, participants were randomly assigned to either a sleep-restricted state, meaning just 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night, or a well-rested state of 8 to 9 hours. Week 2 was a washout week, where they could sleep normally to reset their systems. Then, in week 3, they flipped to the opposite treatment. And to make sure everyone was actually following the rules, they didn't just take anyone's word for it, they tracked their sleep continuously using wrist-worn actigraphy watches.
At the end of each treatment week, participants faced a highly structured, incentivized choice task. First, they were given a starting amount of real cash. Then, they had to choose between a safe, guaranteed option or a risky gamble, which was presented in either of those gain or loss frames we just talked about. Finally, to test that circadian mismatch, the researchers administered these tests at either 7:30 a.m. or 10 p.m., intentionally aligning or clashing with the participants' personal chronotypes. Real stakes, real fatigue, real biological timing.
All right, Section 4, the surprising results. And trust me, there's a real plot twist in the data here.
The data coming out of this study completely defied some of our most basic assumptions. Let's start with the baseline finding. When analyzing the mean risk-taking scores across all tasks, the number jumped from 4.5 when participants were well-rested up to 4.69 when they were sleep-restricted. Now, I know that might look like a tiny jump, but statistically speaking, it is highly significant. It proves unequivocally that the cognitive tax is real. Just 1 week of sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night definitively increases your overall preference for taking monetary risks.
But wait, here is where that plot twist arrives. When comparing all conditions, if you are well-rested and matched to your ideal time of day, risk-taking is at its lowest, 4.42. Introduce just one adverse state, like restricting your sleep, and risk shoots way up to 4.81. Or if you are well-rested but mismatched to your clock, it jumps to 4.61. But if you are sleep-restricted and facing a circadian mismatch simultaneously, the risk score drops back down to 4.57. Having both adverse states at the exact same time actually mutes the risk-taking effect. The brain's response to extreme compound fatigue isn't just a straight line upward. It's this deeply complex interplay. It's kind of like your brain just short-circuits in a totally different way.
And it's not just your state of mind, it's the nature of the task itself. The specific probability of winning a gamble, whether it's a 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80% chance, heavily interacts with your sleep and circadian states. Being sleep-restricted doesn't just make you blindly hit the gamble button, it actually warps your probability distortion. It completely changes how heavily your brain weighs the odds of winning against that visceral, gut-level fear of losing.
Finally, Section 5. Takeaways for daily decisions. How do we optimize our choices?
So, what does this all mean for us? Let's translate this dense data into practical optimization for your life. If you want to avoid costly cognitive errors, here is your playbook, derived right from the data. First, if a high-stakes decision is looming, you absolutely must protect 8 to 9 hours of sleep to keep that analytical system 2 online. Second, schedule major choices to match your personal circadian peak. Seriously, if you're a night owl, do not sign a mortgage at 8 a.m. Third, be hyper-aware of how a choice is framed. If someone is pitching you on what you stand to lose, and you are tired, your brain is primed to take a foolish gamble. Just step back. And finally, recognize that if you are both sleep-deprived and off your biological clock, your risk profile becomes highly, highly unpredictable.
So, I'll leave you with this. Look at your calendar for next week. Look at the major financial, professional, or personal calls you have to make. Are you making them when your biological hardware is optimized? Or are you paying a cognitive tax you didn't even know you owed? It might be time to rethink not just your spreadsheets, but your bedtime. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.